Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show.
Hey everybody, welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Hanging out with Phil once again to talk investing, finance, and retirement. We're going to talk till debt do us part. Kind of a little clever title there. I like that title.
Yeah. Words.
Yeah, right. We're going to break this into a two-parter. So we've got some items to go through to hopefully help resolve or stave off some sources of financial tension for couples, because, couples, they never fight or anything, right?
Never, especially about money. Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously we're going to give this a try here this week in video and audio form. Phil's chilling in the camper. So if you're checking this out on video, if we're able to make this go, depending on the lovely internet connections, we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. But he's up chilling on vacation. So thanks for joining me while you're on vacation, bud.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're up in northern Michigan for a couple of weeks at a state campground. So
yeah, that's awesome. So
enjoying some time.
I guess it wasn't a source of tension between you and the missus to take some time to work. So that's good.
No, she knows the drill. Usually it's a work a little bit in the morning and then have fun in the afternoon. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in. We'll just get it rocking and rolling. So we've got a few of these. Like I said, I want to break them down a little bit. We've identified a couple of big ones here. There's some places, again, where it could just be tension about money for couples. So let's just start off. And you've been doing this a long time, Phil. So you've seen tons of stuff when people come in. And oftentimes when people come in, they start to have a conversation. You realize that maybe it's the first time they've ever even told each other about it, right?
Yeah. I've had a few of those discussions. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. So hopefully you can have these chats before you see your financial advisor. But then, if not, at least they are there to kind of mediate a little bit. But let's start with risk tolerance and investment. Okay. Often, opposites attract, yin yang. Whatever you want to do. So in a lot of ways, our spouse or a significant other may be very different from us. And certainly it could be in their appetite for taking risk. Traditionally, it's the man, the husband, right? The man is trying to hey, let's get all that we can. And usually the spouse, the female, the wife is going, let's save, let's be more cautious or whatever the case is.
Not quite as risky. And
but
more traditionally that way. I mean, not always, but
not always. It could be any particular way. But point being is that
they don't agree.
Right.
So.
They don't agree. Whatever the dynamic is, they don't agree. And that can lead to fights.
It can, and it ultimately needs to lead to compromise. It's his money, her money. I mean, that's one way to look at it.
Our money.
If they each have their own accounts, they don't have to have the same risk tolerance on each of their own accounts. We can kind of tweak it that way.
Yeah. My wife and I have our individuals. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And there's still couples that we work with today a lot that will have individual accounts like that. So, especially, if they're both had their own career, they both got their own IRAs, 401ks.
Yep.
So, they can each have their own risk tolerance on those accounts. And granted, there still has to be kind of an overlying concept of how we're handling risk and managing it amongst all the accounts. So there still has to be some compromise and coming together. Often where it gets a little bit more tricky, though, is where maybe one of the spouses is the primary earner. They are more either risky or risk averse either way. That's where it sometimes gets a little bit more tricky. You have to have some compromise and just come up with an agreement, a plan together, maybe parse some of the money off. And if you're really risky, well, okay, let's set that aside and we can use that as, I don't want to say the play money, but money that we take a little bit more risk with to satisfy that desire for some risk. And then make sure the rest of the money kind of fits within what the plan calls for and, maybe help satisfy the other spouse and in their comfort for not as much risk.
Well, and I think compromise is going to probably be clearly the ticket all the way through this. It's the ticket in relationships anyway. So let's identify a few more. Sure. We're going to do 5 this week on the episode. So let's go to number 2 here. The retirement age, for example. When do you want to retire? Well, I'll just use myself. There's 5 years difference between my wife and I. And she's like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with those 5 years when you go to retirement and I'm still working. Right. So it could if there was a couple of years where like even me mentioning it would flat tick her off, right? Like we couldn't even have a conversation about it
until I retire.
Yeah,
so
we couldn't have a
about?
conversation about it because she'd get in a bad mood about it. But then, over time, she's kind of gotten a little bit more comfortable with it. We've worked on compromises and conversations. And now it's not quite the source of tension that it was. But again, it certainly could be. And that's only 5 years. What if there's a 10-year age gap or something like that?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, both spouses don't necessarily have to retire at the same time. It's not a requirement. I mean, I've got a lot of clients where one spouse is retired, the other one isn't, but it helps, and very often if that happens where one spouse retires early and the other one doesn't retire, it doesn't take long before the spouse that hasn't retired finally decides, I don't see the benefit of working anymore.
I'm done
unless
with
it's
this.
financial.
Yeah.
Because it does make it a little bit more challenging, especially if you've got a vision of an active retirement, a lot of travel, something the one spouse doesn't want to travel on their own. And I'm sure the spouse still working doesn't want them to, they don't want to miss out, so there can be some compromise there. If the spouse still working works remotely, which is pretty commonplace in today's day and age. I mean, that could be a solution too.
You
could be
you could be in your camper.
It could be in the camper. Yeah. But that actually has become more common now with COVID. And, since that time that people do work remotely and have postponed retirement because of the benefit of being able to work remotely and work in a camper or, from a VRBO or hotel or whatever you want to do. So
speaking of the camper thing, we've talked about it before. My buddy, retired way early with a military pension because of injury sustained in combat and stuff like that. And his wife could not let it go. Right. I mean, they're in their 40s. And, and she's like, you get to do nothing. And this isn't cool. I mean, so like they changed their whole life to make it work, sold everything. Now they travel and live in a camper. But you know what? There was some rough patches, but now they love it. They're both retired.
They got it figured out and made it work. And
they got it figured out. His pension for military disability and stuff's going to take care of them for what they need. And they're happy. So you can find it, but you got to work towards it. Right.
Yeah. And the key, like you mentioned, is having that discussion. Don't wait till you get there and then let the problem, rise and become a real problem. Then, I mean, talk about it. And that's a great part of planning. We go through all these discussions up front. When do each of you want to retire? What does that look like? If there are differences in retirement ages, what does that time frame look like? What's the one spouse not retiring? What are they going to do? What are what hobbies?
Yeah. And the travel could get delayed, right? Okay. If there's a 5-year difference, well, we're not going to do big travel until both are retired or whatever. Right. So it might be more limited travel, during vacation times. With the working spouse. So again, it's just all conversation and compromise.
Yep, all discussion to have. So
let's go to number 3 here. Legacy for the kiddies. So this could be a huge point of fighting because one spouse may say, I'm not leaving them jack. We worked
we didn't get anything. Why would we leave it to them? So
we worked for this, I'm not leaving them the camper, they can get their own camper, right? And the other one might be like, no, we need to leave them all that we can. So again, and it can be a huge point of contention between couples in that disparity. So that's got to be a tougher challenge, I'd imagine, to work through.
It does. I mean, because with that one, that can affect lifestyle. So I mean, if the one spouse has said, hey, I worked hard to get where we're at and I'm going to enjoy retirement and spend every last dime, but the other spouse really has a desire to leave something, that's a discussion you have to have. You've got to come together on that to some extent. And maybe it's a compromise where it's not as much as the one spouse wanted, but there is something left aside. But again, you don't want it to fester and become a serious problem.
I would think for planning here, like, okay, all right, let's find a compromise. Let's just say one spouse wants to leave, let's just say $20,000 per kid and you got 4 kids, right? Or something like that. Right. And it's like, okay, well, that's going to really eat into our, enjoyment in retirement. So maybe we compromise and get that down to 10,000, or whatever the case is. Right. So there's places to find it, but if you're not willing to talk through it, then you're going to really, stub your toe and get hung up on it. And it's going to delay your own satisfaction in retirement.
Absolutely. And I mean, often with something like this, the problem may seem bigger than it is. So I mean, if one spouse wants to leave each of the kids $20,000, well, let's put it in the plan and run it. Let's see what it looks like. And maybe that really doesn't change the plan much.
Exactly.
So then that's fine. So ultimately it's with any of these, don't just throw everything out the window until you've had the discussion and start to run the numbers to see, does it work?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
all right. So let's go to number 4 here. Housing in retirement. Okay, same kind of piece here, right? So this could be one person is super emotionally attached to the house you raised the family in.
Yep, you raised the family living there. You don't want to give that up. So
yeah, and now you want the grandkids to come there and have that same kind of experience or whatever. But again, the other spouse is like, hey, I don't want to take care of this joker, or I don't want to go up and down the stairs anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's a colonial. I can't handle the stairs or whatever the case is. So
when the kids are in, the grandkids are involved, right? There's going to be a ton of emotional
there's lots of emotions involved then. So Right. Or, another one that I've seen come up is, as the kids have grown and started their own family, now they've developed their family in another state.
Yeah.
Do we want to sell everything we have here and go follow the kids? And one spouse might be saying, no way. I've spent a lot of time fixing the house up and this is where I'm at. I love it. We've got all our friends and everyone else here. Why would we want to do that? So, it's like all these, it's a discussion to have and compromise, and maybe you don't sell at that point. Maybe you end up buying a condo in that area. I've got one couple that's actually what they've done. They love where they're at in Michigan. They've got their friends and, a lot of connections and activities and hobbies here. Their kids have moved to Ohio. So rather than sell and move to Ohio, they've bought a condo down there. So they at least have a home base when they're there. They don't have to stay with the kids. But kind of satisfies both sides of it. So
Ohio,
it's always a solution, but it often involves first definitely having the discussion and then often compromise.
Yeah. As a U of M person, Ohio, no, can't do it.
That's right.
All right. So let's do our 5th one here, our final one for this episode, and then we'll do 5 more on the next one. And that is, you mentioned lifestyle a couple minutes ago. So the overall so all of these could affect the overall retirement lifestyle.
Absolutely.
But it also could be a huge point of contention and fighting. So you're in your camper right now. We're doing this. You're on vacation. We're doing this remotely. But what if your wife, let's say, hated camping, hated going and using it, right? Or whatever the case is. So that's a point of contention. I mentioned that my wife being younger than me, well, she travels a lot for work and I never go anywhere. So in retirement, I want to maybe travel a little bit. And she's kind of like, I want to stay home because that's
I want to have a chance to stay home and enjoy what we have.
Yeah. It's the opposite. Right. And so how you fund that lifestyle or what it even looks like, again, is going to be probably the biggest battlefront.
Absolutely. Yeah. It comes down to compromise the discussion up front of, okay, what are each of your desires? What do you want to do? Like in your case, maybe you do some travel, but not as much, and maybe there's trips then that you take and she doesn't. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't say you have to do everything together, but have those discussions up front and build it into the plan, because it can all of a sudden become more costly. If one is very attached to golf and they want to do a lot of golfing and travel for golf. I've got some clients that love to do that and play the different courses. And that can be very costly, especially if they both do it, but just again, have the discussion, run the numbers, never throw anything out until you've had the discussion, look at your financial scenarios, see, does it work? Then make the determination, get the facts down. Then you can have a more reasonable discussion to say, oh, look, we can do it.
Right.
Now let's work it out and see, versus just saying, no way, you're not doing that.
Yeah, buddy of mine.
That's where tension gets in. So.
Yeah, for sure. Another buddy of mine, he loves to fly fish, and he's also very, very fair skinned and burns easy. And his wife is a Southern girl through and through, and she likes to be out in the sun and tan and all that kind of stuff. She loves to go to the beach, and he's like, I can't. He's like, I have to hide at the beach because I'll be a lobster. So to your point about different trips, so they've budgeted and they plan so that she can take some trips to the beach area, and he doesn't go. And he goes
fly fishing.
He goes fly fishing to the mountains,
Perfect.
right? So, but you got to budget for that because it's not cheap, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. Because now you're all of a sudden doing 2 vacations at one time, and that gets costly. So
right. You can make it work, but with a strategy and a plan, it works a little easier.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Have that discussion up front. Don't leave it to the end, because it if you haven't planned for it, then maybe it's not going to work, and it becomes a real problem at that point.
For sure. All right. Well, there's the first 5 on our conversation about some sources of financial tension with couples when it comes to retirement planning and strategizing. So if you need some help, again, as always, reach out to Phil, get yourself onto the calendar. Even though he's on vacation this week, you could still, send him an email or stop by the website, whatever you'd like to do. philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube as well. We'll see if this video, if the internet connection lets us turn this into video form this week or not, but either way, we'll have some content for you. So you folks have a great week, and we'll see you next time here on the podcast. This has been Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.